But, well, go ahead and start the meeting, and then
Do we have
I want to brief everybody on what's.
do we have an agenda? We need to do a prayer and everything?
That's up to you.
No, all right. All right, being 5:31, I'll now call to order the special meeting for June 29th, 2022, and the Government Center, Town of Lake Placid. Would you please call the roll?
Mayor Holbrook,
Here?
Councilmember Royce,
Here.
Councilmember Wilson,
Here.
Councilmember Sapp, Councilmember Hayes.
Here.
All right. Although this, what I see, says July 11th.
Oh, I corrected it, but it's still not correct.
Yeah, so just, if you'd correct the date. We're here for the audit. We appreciate you being here tonight. And I guess at this time, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you and Rachel.
Mr. Mayor, can I run through council real quick first? I know this is unusual, but on the website now, there's a watch meeting site and a watch live link. And this is what we're putting out to the public right now. So be very careful of any comments and everything outside of the meeting, or, you know, because there's lots of live mics. I mean, I've got it turned off, and so just be aware of be aware of live mics inside of this room. But we're all this gets published to the YouTube, and then it gets captioned, and so everything is all ADA compliant and legal. So just wanted to let you guys know.
Thank you for the heads up.
Thank you.
You?
All right, well, good evening. Thank you guys all very much for coming this evening. I know it's a special meeting and you're kind of having to come out of your way, but I certainly appreciate that. I'm here to go over the results of this town's 2021 fiscal year end audit, and I'll try and have a brief presentation for you here this evening. My name is Daniel Anderson. I'm a director with Malden & Jenkins, and I did have responsibility for the overall audit process. Malden & Jenkins was engaged to perform an audit and express an opinion on the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements. And I'm pleased to report that we have expressed an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of assurance that we can render. Therefore, in our opinion, the financial statements are free of material misstatement. A few of the required communications that we have to governance, and then I'll talk a little bit about the financial statements themselves as well. The financial statements and the accounting policies and procedures of the town are the responsibility of management. Our responsibility is to be independent of the town and then to design our audit procedures based on our risk assessment of the town to ensure that we can support the opinion that we've offered. Management's also responsible for any judgments and estimates that they have within the financial statement document. In performing the audit, we had no significant difficulties in working with management. As always, I appreciate the hard work that Rachel puts in every year in getting us the information that we need for the audit. She and her team work very hard to help us meet the June 30 deadline. We did have several audit adjustments that were posted to the financial statements in order to ensure that we could issue an unmodified opinion. These have all been provided to Rachel and her team and posted to the town's general ledger. There were no uncorrected misstatements where we proposed an adjustment and management elected not to post it. We had no disagreements with management over the application of any accounting policies or procedures. At the conclusion of the audit, we did obtain written representation of management over the information provided to us. We're not aware of management's consultation with any other accountants. There were no significant issues discussed with management that we feel we should bring to your attention. And then lastly, Malden & Jenkins is independent with respect to the town in accordance with the governmental auditing standards. So a few highlights, just really things that I wanted to point out in the financial statement. Certainly, it is a very large document, and I'm sure you guys love taking the time that it takes to read through every single page. So if I were recommending some things to look at, I would obviously start with the auditors or the management's discussion and analysis. This really provides a lot of information that management tells you what really happened throughout the audit period, why certain account balances varied from current to prior year. And then it also gives you some information about the other information that's contained within the financial statements and what the different sections of the financial statements have. From that point, you can kind of leisure on back and hone in on the things that might be super specific or super important to any of you individually. But I would certainly take the time to read the 7 to 8 pages that are within the management's discussion and analysis. As far as the results of the town go, I don't know how much you've looked into the numbers, but one thing that really stands out, and it stood out across all of our clients that participate in the Florida retirement system, is you'll note there was a significant decline in the net pension liability related to the Florida retirement system. Ultimately, the retirement system as a whole had a tremendous year in regards to its investment income. So the total liability for all participants of the Florida retirement system went from about $49 billion to about $9 billion. So obviously, the town's proportion of that took a significant decrease as well. Now, without sounding like a governmental accounting nerd, one thing that the standard that was put in several years ago did was it said, we realize that these net pension liabilities that we're requiring everyone to report are very long-term in nature, and then they are going to be dependent on the market conditions. And there may be several years where there's tremendous investment returns, and then there's going to be some years where there's not so good investment returns. So they've basically said, we have an expectation of what we expect those investment returns to be, and then any difference between what actually occurred and what the expectation was isn't going to go through your net income on an annual basis. We're going to allocate that over 5 years. So if you notice the significant decline in the long-term liabilities related to the net pension liability, you'll also notice that there's a significant increase in what we call deferred inflows of resources. And this is basically identifying, okay, this is a function of the net pension liability that's going to be allocated and amortized over 5 years. That way, we're not having huge fluctuations go through your income statement on an annual basis. So again, that's one thing. It's a question that I've gotten a lot in doing these presentations, so I kind of just wanted to be on the forefront and let you know that if you saw that, certainly it's good to see your liability go down, but it's also important to understand that it is still a long-term liability, and as long as you're making the required contributions that the plan sets out there, which you are, it's something very good to monitor year after year on an annual basis. The other thing that I wanted to point out is we did have 2 findings in the current year financial statements related to some significant audit adjustments that were made. One was due to interfund transfers, and essentially revenues that were recorded in the sewer fund were actually belonged to the water fund, so we transferred them over, and they were recorded as charges for services in one fund and a transfer in the other fund. So we just had to make an adjustment to true that up to make sure that the charges for services were properly reported in each fund. And then the other adjustment that was made was in regards to the accrued payroll. And I think, and I'll let Rachel maybe speak to this a little bit, but I think a recommendation that we've had for several years is for the town to implement a pooled cash system. And I was really just discussing it with Rachel, and it sounds like you've started that process and you're working in a pooled cash environment now. So we're trending in the right direction. But I think working with the pooled cash, it kind of created a liability through the pooled cash, and then we also had an accrued payroll outside of that. So we really just double booked that accrued payroll. So we made an adjustment to reduce that accrued payroll liability, which also reduced the expense as well. So those were the 2 findings that we have. That's really all that I have in regards to the presentation, but I'm happy to talk about or answer any questions that you have over the financial statement document, the presentation that I had, or the audit process as well.
Mr. Mayor, as I read through it, I must admit quickly, if I remember, it's 60 or 70 pages or something like that. It's, 57. Okay. Well, I looked through it very quickly, 15, 20 minutes, but mainly we had the 2 minor findings. Management concurred. Everything's good. There are no outstanding problems other than what I'll term minor adjustments that were required, correct?
Yeah, essentially the standards, we do our audits on a materiality basis, and the standards say, if there is an adjustment that's over a threshold of that materiality, you have to report it as a finding. So it's, I would say that it's minor. Obviously, no one likes to see findings, so I don't want to kind of blow it off and say that it's no big deal, but it's also not a huge system-wide concern that there's a bigger issue going on. It's really just kind of closing out the year in books, and just a couple things got missed. That's it.
And my next final question is: in the past, we've talked about, and I think this is what perhaps related to what you just referenced, reducing the number of accounts we had or how things were payable, and we've been doing that. And the only concern, at least I've expressed in the past, is still allows us to very clearly track in individual entities what's happening, right? It's just in the actual bank accounting that we have combined stuff. We are still tracking lines of business or enterprise funds separately, correct?
Absolutely. And I would argue with the pooled cash system, it really gives you a better picture of, by line of business, by fund that you have, what their true cash that they have at any point in time actually is.
Okay.
When you had multiple bank accounts, you could have the water fund that you could look up at any point in time and say, oh, we've got X dollar amount in the water fund. However, Rachel was having to actually manually go in and say, well, some of these or some of the money that's in here really belongs to the sewer fund, and I need to transfer that to the sewer fund bank account.
Okay.
With the pooled cash, it's all within one bank account or just a few bank accounts. And the general ledger, the accounting software, really processes everything so you can look and see what the true cash in each fund is. And then in total, they match up to what the bank account and the bank reconciliation says.
Thank you.
As far as these two issues, when this is submitted to the state, is this going to be reported as is, correct? There's not going to be any, these material weaknesses are reported to the state. Is this going to affect us in the grant processes or anything in the future?
It shouldn't. The one thing that the state has taken an issue with is when you have repeat findings for 3 or more consecutive years. So we're happy to report that there were 2 findings last year, but those were resolved. These are separate to that, so the state kind of resets the timer, we'll say. But I do think that, it's not an easy task to take on, and I think even I'm underappreciating probably the process that Rachel's gone through to implement this pooled cash system and the amount of time and effort. Once it's set up, it's fantastic, but it is a significant process to go through, and I think the town is still going through that process, and that's kind of what triggered these to happen. I think both of these issues are going to be resolved when we eliminate some of the bank accounts and everything is flowing through the pooled cash system. We're not going to have as many of these concerns because the system's going to be accounting for everything properly.
Okay, thank you.
There was something somewhere in, near the end of the report about checks and balances. Are you comfortable with the way that the checks and balances work in the system that is set up here?
We haven't identified any concerns
Okay.
Relating to that. Now, obviously, it's a small town, it's a small department. There are only a limited number of internal controls that you can have before you say it's just too much for us to have based on the personnel that we have. So would we love you to have a 10-person accounting department and have, perfect internal controls? Absolutely, but internal controls are also supposed to be efficient and effective. So you have to take into account what's really appropriate for us.
Okay.
But none of the testing that we performed, serving over several years as your auditor, has really given us any concern about the overall internal control structure.
Cool, thank you.
In your experience in communities that y'all provide auditing services for, in a municipality of our size, how do we compare, in your opinion?
Very comparably, I would say. Probably right in the middle of everything, if I'm just being honest. And the ones that are better are just larger. They're able to have additional resources within the
Sir,
department.
be careful, please, because now she's going to want more money.
She wants a raise. Probably deserves it.
So, Mr. Mayor, Rachel, are we looking for a motion to accept or adopt, or what do we need to say? Okay. If there's,
As written or as
presented.
presented?
well, if there's nothing else from any other council members, I'll move that we accept the audit as presented.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any other comments from the podium? All right, we'll take it to the audience.
I will just make one more point. One of the things that we are proud of is that we offer quarterly education to our clients, and that can extend to the council as well. So, our next one, I'm actually, one of the presenters in August is going to be the audit process and, how you can prepare for the audit and how the town can have a system in place to have additional or best practices for closing out the year end. So certainly Rachel's going to get an invitation to that. She's more than welcome to forward it to any of you if you want to participate in any of it. And then also outside, I know that there's sunshine laws that prevent us from meeting in multiples, but if anyone individually wants to meet at any point between now and during the next audit process, I'm more than happy to do that as well and talk about any questions that you may have.
Well, I think everybody seems to be pretty happy with it, so go ahead and poll the council.
Councilmember Royce?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayes?
Yes.
Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Rachel, keep up the good work. Is there anything else coming before council?
Well, Mr. Mayor, let me just, in case any of the other three of you have not done so, a reminder that your Form 1 is due to the Supervisor Elections Office by Friday, if you haven't already done that. And number two, Mr. Mayor, enjoy your vacation to New York, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
2 days. Well, now, a day and a half.
What's a Form 1?
The Form 1, Ms. Hayes just asked about the Form 1, and I don't know what the timing of your election requires it, but if you're an elected official or you're on any sunshine committee, you have to fill out this very simple financial form and file it with the Supervisor of Elections Office. I know those of us that have been around, they send it to us and remind us to do it, but you may want to inquire, significant penalties start to accrue on July the 2nd, so you may just want to check into it.
Now, you had already filled out a Form 1 during your election process.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is really for 2021 that you
Okay.
report now, so you're good.
I'm good.
You'll get a notice once I update the ethics website you'll be added,
Okay.
and you'll automatically get a mailing for it.
We'll start getting.
If I'm not good, I'm coming to you.
You're good.
Thank you.
All right, nothing else to come before council? Meeting adjourned.
Very good.
Yeah, next year you just want to remember to do it.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
It's a 3-minute